I recently traveled to the place where the most violent sex offenders in Wisconsin are forced to live. I met with some of them to see what their life is like now and to learn if this expensive way to contain them is worth it. What I found is that the men themselves know all about the uproar whenever one of their own is about to be released.
I got convicted of first-degree sexual assault involving two 8-year-old girls.
I committed a violent sexual assault against a young 15-year-old girl in Milwaukee County.
I have several sexual assaults and a lot of other violent crimes.
I was charged with first-degree sexual assault of a child.
These four men are considered so potentially dangerous, so sexually violent, they're locked away, even though they've already served their time in prison.
Well, I was angry, as a lot of guys were.
As their prison time was ending, the state took them to court and had them committed under what's called the Chapter 980 law. That means mental health experts testified the men were still a danger to society.
I really wasn't surprised when it happened.
With that finding, the court sent them to live here, the Sand Ridge Secure Treatment Center in Mauston, where the men are not considered prisoners, but rather patients.
I wasn't really surprised. I was a little disappointed.
They will stay here indefinitely until the court no longer finds them a danger to society.
I felt that at the time that I did my prison time, and I felt that it was unjust what had happened to me.
We won't show you the faces of Ed, Ken, Terry, and Jeff so as not to traumatize their victims further. But we will show you what their life is like now. They live on a campus of 65 acres. They cannot leave, but they can move about freely within their living unit.
Each one of these is a 25-bed unit.
Sand Ridge Director Steve Waters explains that each of the 275 patients here has his own room. It's small, just 92 square feet. All possessions have been reviewed and approved by Sand Ridge staff. Everything, even pictures like these.
I am surprised that he's allowed to have a poster in his room, like of a woman.
The institution has policies about what is or is not allowed in terms of that. So what would be allowed would be items that are not viewed as suggestive, pornographic, or needs to be age appropriate.
Basic cable TV is offered, which the patients pay for. They can earn $2 an hour working, and they have access to, among other things, a library, a gym, a basketball court, and a garden. Mental health treatment is offered, but not required. Treatment Director Dr. David Thornton says one could mandate the patients show up in treatment, but it wouldn't do much good.
The essence of this kind of treatment is it's about personal choice. And if the guy doesn't make that choice in the direction of change, then nothing anybody else can do can force him to make that choice.
But Waters says 88% of the patients do participate in treatment. They know it's unlikely they'll be released if they don't. Dr. Thornton says the minimum stay at Sand Ridge for someone making progress in treatment is 6 years. Ed has been in treatment for 10.
I learned how to think before I act. I learned how to look at the long-term consequences, not only to myself, but to the victim and society as a whole.
Talk for support! Thank you!
One such consequence, the outrage and fear some neighbors feel when a 980 patient is released nearby. To this day, placing a patient in Milwaukee County especially isn't easy, and that has affected Ed and others at Sand Ridge.
If you don't think you're going to get out, with the purpose in availing yourself in a program or taking it seriously.
Did you talk about that with the Milwaukee County?
Yes, I do.
Yeah.
Yes, and there's a lot of frustration and it constantly growing. If you don't see no one from Milwaukee County transitioning back into that environment, that hope started to dwindle. And once that hope is gone, then what?
Terry agrees. He's a pedophile who's been in the system for the last 16 years. If he's ever released, he too would be placed in Milwaukee County, where it's clear some neighbors would rather he stay at Sand Ridge.
I understand that people will be upset and feel that, let him stay in there the rest of his life. And they're entitled to that. But I know within myself, within my heart, and within my mind that I know I'm not a threat to society anymore because of the tools that I have been given in treatment to go back out into society again to be a successful citizen.
If no one ever getting out of a program, how can you tell if it's working?
Since the Chapter 980 program started in Wisconsin in 1994, 372 men have been committed. 59 have gotten out on supervised release. The most recent example, Dennis Marth in Waukesha County. Of those 59, 40% have been brought back into the system, not for reoffending, but for engaging in what experts deem risky behavior.
That's an extraordinary record, actually, much greater, much more successful than you would think would be possible.
29, including the infamous Billy Lee Morford, have been fully discharged. The courts no longer find reason to hold them, so they may live wherever they like, discharged from their 980 commitment. But of those 29, 2 have since been put back in prison for committing new sex crimes. Controversial as it is, the civil commitment program is expected to grow.
This way will be 200 new beds, and then 100 beds will go the other way.
Budget permitting, Sandridge will double its capacity to 600 by the year 2011. The expansion itself will cost taxpayers almost $38 million. Now, if these patients had stayed prisoners, it would cost taxpayers almost $28,000 a year to house and feed one of them. But here at Sandridge, where again the men are considered patients, not prisoners, that cost per person is $105,000 a year.
It costs nearly 4 times as much to have someone be here as opposed to a prison. Can't we just keep them in prison?
People need to understand that Chapter 980 is a civil commitment that occurs after your prison term. The only way these laws are constitutional is it cannot be an extension of their incarceration.
If you're going to hold people in forensic mental health type conditions as patients rather than as inmates, which is what the law requires of us, then there are a great variety of standards that we're expected to meet, and those things all add cost.
Those costs vary. 18 other states have similar commitment programs for so-called sexually violent persons. In Iowa, for instance, it's $72,000 a year per patient. In Illinois, a range of $100,000 to $120,000 a year. And in Washington State, $163,000 per patient a year. Is the expense in Wisconsin worth it? Some critics call Sandridge an expensive, glorified prison, an exercise in futility. In letters to me, some patients remain bitter about being sent here in the first place. Some, but not all.
I know this isn't a popular opinion around here, but this is the best experience I've had in my life.
Ken from Sheboygan County was sent to Sandridge the day it opened in 2001.
I knew I was kind of a phony because I wasn't that tough man that I was trying to portray to everybody.
He says through treatment and religion, he's learned to change. He, too, is aware of the community uproar when some 980 patients are put on supervised release.
Can you understand that fear?
Oh, yes.
Is it justified?
I have mixed feelings about it, really. People coming out of here that are on supervised release, and at least people are aware of it, you know. They should be more scared, I think, of the person and their uncles and stuff that they're not aware of.
Ken hopes to win supervised release within the next few years. Jeff, a pedophile from Kenosha County, does as well.
All I wanted to do was feel good.
How do you get to the point in your mind that assaulting a child would make you feel good?
It's hard to explain. It's not that it made me feel good. It was that I thought I would feel good, and the child just happened to be the individual that was handy. It could have been anybody, but the child was there.
Are you confident that when you get out you won't offend again?
Yes, I am. I'm very confident that I can get out and I can live not just sexual assaulting anymore, but I can live a clean, sober, lawful life.
Where does that confidence come from?
It comes from me realizing that I am somebody. I can do things for society. I don't have to leech off of society.
How can we be sure you're not acting now?
You can't. You can't. The only thing that I can say is for the past 7 years, this is who I've been, which is like 180 from who I used to be. If I was putting on an act, I think somewhere in 7 years, someone, I would slip somewhere.
Here they sit, hoping to win their freedom, hoping to prove society's fears unfounded. Sandridge officials say it's all about protecting the public. They point to a study which found that in the first 10 years of the program, 425 sexual assaults were prevented because, they say, these offenders were kept away from society. And we should note, Kai, that Sand Ridge officials did select for us those 4 patients that we spoke with.
And so how do the experts know if the men are actually making progress in the treatment?
Well, frankly, it's a combination of things, an observation over time to see if the manipulative behavior has really changed. That's often why patients are there so long. They're evaluated by mental health experts, and among other things, they take polygraph tests to see if what they're telling those experts is really indeed true.
That's their final test. All right, Joyce, thank you.